Do you remember when Jell-O salads were the bomb? Or when Sunny D was the coolest drink in town? We don't remember that either, except that you were born in the 1970s. From sugary sandwiches like the Sloppy Joe to healthy foods like cottage cheese, these are 10 food traditions we've left behind. Starting at number 10 is ambrosia salad. Ask anyone who lived through the 90s. They would instantly tell you that ambrosia salad was the go-to dessert at the time. This was because it was easy to make, and the recipes were very accessible, mainly pineapple, mandarin oranges, shredded coconut, marshmallows, and sour cream. If it was not served at family gatherings or holiday dinners, then you could find it at church potlucks. And what a special treat it was, with that combination of sweet fruits, chewy marshmallows, and creamy sour cream. But as special as it was, it fell out of favor from the consuming public. People's taste changed as a preference for lighter and fresher desserts, often made with less sugar and fewer processed ingredients. Besides that, ingredients like marshmallows have lost their appeal to most modern eaters. And it's also more than likely that for the younger generation, the connection to this food just wasn't the same as it was for their grandparents. It was only a matter of time. Ambrosia salad died a very slow death. Although today, this dish is still being made by some families who are very proud of keeping tradition alive. It is just what it is, a nostalgic dish that only a select few eat, and on very few occasions. It's been left behind. Number 9. Frozen meals or TV dinners. Now, just like ambrosia, frozen meals, or TV dinners as they're sometimes called, were also a popular culinary treat of the past. In the 1950s, if you wanted something quick and easy to make without spending hours in the kitchen, then this was the perfect meal for you. Besides, this meal was so convenient that people could easily eat it while watching TVs, which was a new and popular activity at the time. So when companies like Swanson saw how much this meal appealed to the people, they began making it. In 1953 alone, they sold over 25 million frozen meals. But the same frozen meals suffered the same fate as ambrosia salad. Walk into any restaurant around you and you won't find it on any menu. But why are frozen meals less popular nowadays? For one, frozen meals are high in sodium, preservatives, and unhealthy fats, which doesn't fit the desire for fresh and nutritious food that many people have today. People would rather buy fresh ingredients from the grocery store to make a perfect home-cooked meal, or they'd rather choose a healthier option in a restaurant. So yes, frozen dinners may have been a staple in many homes in the past, but they are no longer as common. The same can be said of Jell-O. Number 8. Jell-O. Jell-O is another nostalgic treat that has been left behind. Maybe not entirely, but largely. In the past, around the latter part of the 20th century and the early 2000s, Jell-O was this fun thing to make because it came in bright colors and could be molded into interesting shapes. There were also Jell-O salads, which could either be sweet or savory. And the recipe for that salad is unlike anything in this period. It combines canned pineapples, carrots, shrimps, or even leftover meat. As you can tell, it fell out of favor as time went by. The idea of mixing Jell-O with savory foods began to seem less appealing, and the modern eater finds Jell-O salads unappetizing, maybe a little repulsing, and the texture of congealed foods is not as fetching as it used to be. You might still see Jell-O in grocery stores today, but it's usually used in simple desserts and not in salads like it was back then. With many people now preferring desserts that are fresher and less processed, this stops Jell-O from being the go-to party dish in the 90s and early 2000s. Number 7. Fondue. The ideal meal for a fun social gathering in the 70s was fondue. It just couldn't get better than that. At the time, people found the idea of dipping bread, vegetables, and even meat into a hot pot of melted cheese or chocolate very exciting. And the reason why it was such a perfect party or social meal was because everyone could gather around the pot, enjoying a delicious meal while also sharing all kinds of stories. But as you can tell already, fondue is only remembered with fond memories in this day and time. Preparing the ingredients and keeping the cheese or chocolate at the right temperature required extra effort. Plus, cleaning up afterward can be a hassle, as melted cheese can stick to the pot and utensils. As people became busier, they looked for meals that were easier and quicker to prepare. It went out of fashion as new food trends began. But unlike fondue, baked Alaska used to be a high-end delicacy. And that brings us to number 6. Number 6. Baked Alaska. Baked Alaska was the perfect fancy dessert, and because it was fancy, it was a high-end dessert that not everyone could afford to eat. It was a special kind of ice cream cake covered in a fluffy meringue, baked just long enough to create a golden, crispy shell, while keeping the ice cream inside frozen. Interestingly, it was also one of those rare meals that combined hot and cold in such a delicious manner. For those who were able to afford it in the 1950s, it was a delightful treat to have after a meal. For such a delightful meal, one wonders, why didn't this food make it through to the 21st century? Well, the answer is simple. It was not an easy dessert to make. It required several steps, including baking the meringue just right so that it didn't melt the ice cream. For people who wanted to make something simpler and less demanding, this food lost its appeal. Besides, with new desserts like red velvet cake, black forest cake, and Texas sheet cake, Baked Alaska was gradually forgotten. The newer desserts were just as delicious, but definitely not as challenging to prepare. You may still find Baked Alaska in a few high-end restaurants where classic recipes are championed, but the truth is, many don't eat it anymore. Some high-end restaurants, it seems that even with time, this food can't stop being classist, unlike cottage cheese, which could be easily afforded by the average Joe. Number 5. Cottage cheese. Cottage cheese was a popular treat from the 1950s to the 1970s. It was a healthy, low-calorie food perfect for people who wanted to lose weight or stay in shape. During this period, the average American ate about 5 pounds of cottage cheese every year, and people often enjoyed it with fruit or as part of a salad, but it could also be enjoyed on its own. Cottage cheese fell out of favor as yogurt became more popular. Yogurt, especially Greek yogurt, had similar benefits, but the texture was a lot smoother, and there were also a variety of flavors from which one could choose. Without any surprise, people switched from cottage cheese to yogurt. By 2015, the average American's yearly consumption of cottage cheese had dropped to just 2.1 pounds, and yogurt consumption had climbed to nearly 15 pounds per person each year. People may have stopped eating cottage cheese because of a healthier alternative, but the reason why aspic fell out of favor is totally different. Number 4. Aspic. Like cottage cheese, aspic was a major culinary treat in the 1950s. It was like a fancy jelly made from meat or fish broth. What was there not to like? It was pretty to look at, and it tasted good. People loved it, and it was often served at special dinners and parties. Aspic was a dish made from leftover foods. People could gather bones and leftover meat to make the broth, then add it to a mold to set. This ensured that nothing went to waste, and it became popular as a result. Today, you don't see aspic on many dinner tables because, like Jell-O, it was congealed, and people have shifted from that trend of congealed foods. It's now a nostalgic food. Time to talk about a drink everyone left behind. Number 3. Sunny D. Sunny Delight, or Sunny D, was many kids' favorite drink. It was a sugary fruit juice that was incredibly popular in the 90s. During that time, Sunny D was one of the top-selling drinks in the United Kingdom, only behind Coca-Cola and Pepsi. It was marketed as a fun and tasty drink that seemed like a good alternative to soda, with its bright orange color and refreshing taste. Many kids grew up drinking it regularly, and it became a household name. But sooner than anyone would expect, people started to become more aware of the health issues associated with sugary drinks. Sunny D, in particular, was scrutinized, and it was discovered that it contained less than 2% natural orange juice and is mostly made up of water, high fructose corn syrup, and artificial flavors. People wanted healthy foods and drinks, so parents began to avoid giving their children sugary drinks like Sunny D. Between 2005 and 2014, Sunny D's sales dropped significantly, from nearly $293 million to about $189 million. And it has declined even further since then. Now, back to nostalgic foods again. This time, Sloppy Joe. Number 2. Sloppy Joes. A Sloppy Joe is a sandwich made with ground beef cooked in a sauce. The sauce consists of tomatoes, ketchup, onions, Worcestershire sauce, and others. After the meat is cooked in the sauce, it is served on a hamburger bun. The meal was called Sloppy Joe because the meat and sauce often spill out, making it somewhat messy or sloppy to eat. For years, Sloppy Joes were often served in school cafeterias and even family dinners. They were a staple delight that was not only easy to make, but also cheap and affordable. With time, sloppy joes became less popular. People developed new culinary tastes and preferences. Besides, the typical sloppy joe is high in fat and calories, and the sauce is usually too sweet. This wasn't a healthy meal, and as people became more health conscious, their preferences changed, and sloppy joes gradually declined. Also, as more foods became available, especially foods from other cultures and countries, people started to pay more attention to these new foods. Traditional comfort foods like sloppy joe quickly fell out of favor. Now, on to the last one on the list, Frankenbeans. Number 1. Frankenbeans. Frankenbeans, or beans and franks, or beanie weenies as some people call it, is another simple and classic American dish. Typically, this food consists of baked beans and hot dogs. The beans are cooked in a sweet and savory sauce, and the hot dogs are chopped into small portions and mixed in. The meal was a favorite for many families because it was easy to prepare and affordable. It became a regular quick dinner at family gatherings, but sometimes it was eaten as a side dish. The typical Frankenbeans is especially high in sodium and fat, mostly because of the processed hot dogs. And since the trend to eat healthy food became more pronounced during this time, foods like Frankenbeans didn't take long to fade out of fashion, making it one of many foods to have been left behind. To wrap it up, many factors have led to the abandonment of these foods and drinks for modern American cuisine. Some foods like Jell-O were simply deemed old-fashioned, and people outgrew congealed foods. Foods like Frankenbeans were deemed unhealthy, and people wanted healthier substitutes. The introduction of various international cuisines has also been responsible for the shift in the American palate. Comfort foods like Sloppy Joe's cottage cheese fell out of favor because of international cuisine. But sometimes, foods like Baked Alaska were abandoned simply because it took more work to prepare. Clearly, there are various reasons, and some of them sometimes intertwine. Which of these nostalgic foods is your favorite? And which one would you love to try if you could? Let me know your answer in the comments section. Remember to hit the subscribe button to enjoy more videos. See you next time.